So great to have your company once again on the marketplace. This is your home of NBL free agency news, everything that's happening with every team. You find out about it here on the marketplace and, of course, nbl.com.au. Today we take a closer look at the Adelaide 36ers. Always a team of interest during free agency for a lot of different reasons. We're going to try and unpack where they're at so far and what they're looking at going forward. I'm Jack Heverin. Olgun and Pete Hooley join me as always here on the marketplace. They know everything that's going on during this period. And gentlemen, as I welcome both of you, the Adelaide 36ers not quite in the headlines as often this free agency period, perhaps as they have been previously.
I mean, they were early on. We speak about some of those teams who were being patient. They were one of the teams that struck early on a lot of their sort of phase A guys. So they got what they wanted early on in the piece. You know, remember our first live show, they were one of the only teams that really had any movement. So they've been pretty active, and now we're at a position where it's sort of all eyes on who they're going to bring in import-wise.
They're almost at that stage now, Pete, aren't they, where it's the cream on top of the cake.
It is, and again, they've got the pieces there. They're in a different situation to a lot of other teams where they've had two marquee locals locked in for multi-year deals. I talk of DJ Vasiljevic and Isaac Humphries, where maybe last couple of seasons, they've just gone to get talent and say, hey, we're going to make this kind of work with all the talent there, rather than looking at the marquees, which we talk about for a lot of teams, how important marquees are and how do we best utilise these two to going forward, where Isaac Humphries is one of the best big men in the league when used in the right way. We've seen that time and time again. Vasiljevic, one of the best shooters in the league. So to be able to do that now, and they can go out there and be really, the word patient, but really careful, I guess, and look and say, what pieces do we put around them? Obviously, Flynn Cameron is a massive signing for them in the off-season as well. And again, you're looking at the top 8, maybe 9 guys to be able to go and contend for a title, and they've started off well.
So let's start by taking stock a little bit with Adelaide and what they've got so far. Here is their depth chart, and as you say, Pete, it's a great starting point when you've got Vasiljevic and Humphries locked in. You plug Flynn Cameron in there as well. You can pretty quickly see how this will all come together.
Well, let's address the depth chart with Flynn Cameron at the starting small forward, right? We saw him play primary ball handler at times for Melbourne United, even off the ball with the shooting guard. Now, from all reports, what we understand from what the Adelaide 36ers want, and Olgun was saying it in a couple of earlier episodes, where they see him as a 3-and-D type player in terms of he's going to get a whole lot more opportunity at Adelaide than he did at Melbourne. Different situation between the players he was behind in Melbourne. It was just unfortunate, but he definitely developed and improved a whole lot. But they're going after an import point guard. So we expect Flynn Cameron to start. So you look where their gap is. They want an import point guard. They want an import power forward. And the third import will be a backup big. So Flynn Cameron's going to slot in at the small forward, essentially, Vasiljevic. They're all interchangeable. I know it looks weird that people are going to point it out, but I had to get that one off my chest.
Yeah, and it's you go to the bench, Olgun, Isaac White, Keanu Rasmussen, Michael Harris. Even Ben Christie can do a bit of both. There's some versatility there as well.
You can mix and match a lot of sort of these 6 names here as far as who's on the floor with who. You can have, Isaac White and DJ Vasiljevic on the floor at the same time. You have 2 sharpshooters on the floor. Flynn Cameron will take on some ball carrying duties as well. He's not just there to be a 3-and-D guy. So there's a lot of ball carrying here. There's a lot of shooting here. And I think that's where this team wants to go. They want to be a team that plays with pace and shoots a lot of threes. And when you look at the way they've recruited so far, it's clear that they're going that direction.
This is the juicy part about Adelaide, though, when you look at their depth chart, is that they've got vacancies at the import 1 and the import 4. History tells us that if you can land those positions, you're really well placed for the season.
And we think of the allotment of money they have for those spots. So for context, the 36ers have consistently been a top 3 spend team as far as the cash they're willing to spend. And so you think of the allotment of money for those 3 import spots, I'd say 90% of it would go to that point guard spot and that power forward spot. You're putting all NBL level money into those 2 import spots. And so you're trying to get the highest level talent that you possibly can for those 2 spots. And then I'm told that it'll be a backup big of some sort for the 3rd import. That might be more of a potential, maybe someone out of college, maybe someone less proven, a budget big, but maybe someone who can still plug and play in different areas.
And Matt Weston spoke to me on NBL Now and said that his priority was the power forward. And he talked about that. Then recent history shows you need to have a really strong power forward, dynamic power forward to contend in this league every single year. So there's some big names out there. You talk about the allotment of money they could go out there and make that splash with, then there's certain names you can throw up there that could potentially fit. But all those ones that you start to float around, nailing any of those puts them right in the mix with the other complementary pieces. You've got Humphries down there. Flynn Cameron's set for a massive season. I mean, it's no going early crow, but he's going to be a contender for most improved player, you'd think, just based on getting added opportunity. And then Vasiljevic, you nailed the import point guard. They're going to be right around the mark.
This is slightly niche, this question, but while we're here, we may as well ask it. Out of an import point guard or an import four, is a four harder to land than a one from an import perspective? Is one harder than the other? It is a question that we do see a lot in the comments section.
I think there's a sentiment that there are a lot of really high-level import point guards out there. They're hovering around the G League in Europe or otherwise. Like, they exist. They're easier to find just because it's easier to find smaller guys.
Sure.
Getting a high-level power forward who is really effective in this league, that's a bit tougher. It's a more risky proposition, I think.
And a lot of those you see can end up in Japan and China as well. So it is harder because they have more options. They have more offers on the table then to have to compete with. But for them to stay, and Matt Weston told me on NBL now that they're prioritising that power forward spot. So they're going to be looking at those markets to see what kind of big names can we get to land there. And as we said, if they get one of those, which I'm assuming they'll be patient with to make sure it's the best one possible, they're in a really, really good starting point.
And the thing that I'm thinking about is that import in the 4 spot is someone who will more than likely be able to play the 5 as well. So having someone to almost be insurance for if Ben Christie isn't at the level quite yet, he's still a young big man, having a 4-man who can play the 5 and also bringing in a backup import 5, I think it gives a lot of insurance for this team in the case that the development of Christie is maybe slower than we think.
And you can't understate their connections as well. Mike Wells has with NBA teams, obviously, with the American market. Matt Weston, we know, went to China to see Kendrick Davis, but then you get a first-hand look of everybody who's around there, and everyone eyes on Japan's league at all times. Europe, we understand a lot of teams are looking at the marquee Aussies who are still around in all those leagues, but when you're doing that, other names pop up. So there's an abundance to choose from, especially as Olgun says, they've got an allotment of money that they can go out there and make a big splash in that signing.
Just on the point guard position, again, just going through the comments and what the fans are telling us here on the marketplace, 2 names keep coming up a lot when it comes to Adelaide. And I guess because they're available and they're known quantities. Jalen Adams being one and Derek Walton Jr. being the other. Any chance either of those are high on the list?
I'd say it's extremely slim. I'd say it's more than likely not going to happen. I don't see Walton Jr. in Adelaide. I don't see Jalen Adams in Adelaide. The other reason why we bring them up is because they're two guys who have flagged that they'd like to stay in the NBL. And so you see the import point guard openings. You can theoretically slot them in, but I don't believe as of now that Adelaide is interested in either of them.
And it also makes it enticing, right? One's an MVP, one's a Championship Series MVP. So they've been proven to be able to come in and win titles. So that lining up would make sense for fans to get excited at, but I don't see that eventuating as it stands right now. Things could change certainly, but it doesn't seem like if those two are going to be back in the league, it would be in Adelaide.
Let's talk Isaac Humphries. And the reason for that, Pete, the interview that you did with Matt Weston last week on NBL Now, he spoke about a range of topics, but one was getting Isaac Humphries more involved, was giving him the ball, which for anyone who's listened to a broadcast game that we do of Adelaide, it's a constant theme, is why isn't Isaac Humphries getting more touches? It sounds like the big man's going to be more of a priority this year.
And he has to be. And again, you kind of look at when they were good, not just last year, but the year before as well, was when they made him a priority. There's not that many back to the basket one-on-one offensively talented bigs like Isaac Humphries in the league. So that is a really key thing for them to try and utilise. We talked about Tyra Harrison in the Brisbane Bullets, where he's growing into one of those, but a lot of others are really effective in different ways, but Isaac Humphries is one that if you need a bucket, you can roll the ball into, get action, and let him go to work. He's a great screen and roller as well, but I think he was underutilised a lot last season.
And he's someone who has the potential to be one of the best defenders in the league too. And you think about when were the Adelaide 36ers at their best. It was when they were healthy, but it was also when Isaac Humphries was engaged defensively. And I think there was a corollary between that and them finding him a little bit more offensively. So if you're able to engage him on that end, it completely transforms this team that didn't have the defensive juice last season, but I think he saved them in a lot of games.
And we've had glimpses. We haven't had an Isaac Humphries season yet, have we? Like an all-NBL potential season, which I think we all believe that he's capable of doing.
And from what we understand about how this team is recruiting right now when it comes to that 4 spot, they're looking for someone who's going to be able to stretch the floor. It was not feasible for a team in 2025 to play 2 bigs at the same time for extended stretches. The Montrezl Harrell, Isaac Humphries front court, as imposing as it was and as cool as it sounds, it's just never going to work because the spacing just never existed. So bringing someone in who's going to be able to stretch the floor, and then bringing in a point guard who's going to be able to maximize the talent around him. And we're not just talking about Isaac Humphries, we're also talking about DJ Vasiljevic, who I think maybe didn't get all the touches that he perhaps should have deserved last season too, just because Kendrick Davis was a really unique on-ball point guard. So I think bringing in imports that are going to maximize the talent on hand is the priority for this team.
I like the fit of that. Flynn, Cameron, Pete, we should talk about him while we're here for this episode because you are really, really high on him. I think the question will be around the role, which you spoke about earlier. It's why we have Flynn Cameron on the depth chart in the 3 position because that was your request, because you've got some intel on how they're going to use him.
Well, I mean, he's going to have to start, right? You talk about how many teams, was it 5 teams, Olgun, that were in the hunt to try and get his signature, the big one being the New Zealand Breakers. Yes, the money's one side of things when it comes to decision-making of that, a multi-year deal, that kind of security, but the other is opportunity. Now, he sees that opportunity in Adelaide, no doubt, long-term, but as we said, they've been very open and vocal. They want a starting import point guard and a starting import power forward, which means looking at the rest of their depth, that opening is going to be the 3 spot. Now, as I said, it's also very interchangeable with Vasiljevic. The 2 and 3 can really switch around. He's going to be holding the ball a lot in the backup primary ball handling duties as well, but he's versatile. He's big enough where if he does get a smaller guard on him, he can punish him in that way. But his potential is unbelievable. We've seen nowhere near what he's capable of at his very best with extended opportunities. He's going to be playing 30-plus minutes a night. You expect him to take this massive jump up in NBL 26, and you know that he's going to be excited for that. He's had to play behind Delhi, Shea Ely, Chris Golding, Ian Clark for a couple of seasons, which helped him become the player he is now. Now it's time to take the shackles off and let Flynn Cameron be who he's meant to be.
Just look at the 2 teams in the championship series last season. It was Melbourne United and the Illawarra Hawks. The Illawarra Hawks, they would generally close games with Trey Kell, Tyler Harvey, and Dave O'Hickey all on the floor. United would start with Shea Ely, Matthew Dellavedova, Chris Golding. They'd have Ian Clark. So the key is multiple ball carriers.
Yep. And
And that's what this team now has. They have a ball carrier at the 3 spot. They're always going to be on the floor with at least 2 or 3 ball carriers.
So credit to the 36ers front office. I know that they get a lot of heat and there's some contentious decisions that have been made over the journey. That's in the past. We're talking about the here and now. Credit to what they've done so far. The next 2 moves, though, the two main import spots in particular, would it be fair to say that that feels like the difference between them, you know, on paper being one of the top contenders and not? Is that what it's boiled down to now?
Well, the hope for the 36ers is that the allotment of money they're spending there is that point guard and that power forward should be their 2 best players.
Yep.
That's what should be the case. And so if that is the case, then those are the 2 guys that are going to lift the ceiling of this team. So if they nail them next to DJ Vasiljevic, next to Isaac Humphries, then all of a sudden you have a really impressive top 4 that you can then continue with and potentially compete for a championship.
And the complementary pieces are really solid. I mean, Flynn Cameron, the one we just spoke about there, but Isaac White, Michael Harris, 2 guys coming off the bench who wanted a change of scenery and guys who can stretch the floor. And Matt Weston also said they're going to shoot a whole lot of threes. If you make the interior presence a priority in that's going to space up and allow more space to become available on the outside. And if you can shoot the 3-ball at a high rate, you're going to be around the mark every season.
A couple of good decisions and some big decisions to make for Adelaide, hopefully for their sake and their fans' sake, because they've had a few of these kind of almost seasons. I don't think I'd call them false dawns. That's too harsh. But they've had a couple of these in a row now where you look at a team and think, oh, that looks pretty good. And then for a bunch of different reasons, it hasn't worked.
They've had a lot of teams where you look at the roster, you look at the rotation, and you think, this team has the talent to go all the way, but for one reason or another, it doesn't. Last season, you have 2 really passionate imports in Kendrick Davis and Montrezl Harrell, where the entire Adelaide became really emotionally charged, and that wasn't sustainable over the course of an entire season. If you sat behind their bench ever in a game, you can see it happening in real time. There is a priority in making sure that the 2 imports they bring in are more sort of relaxed individuals, just two players who I think the intel is very forward in that they are high character individuals who are known as good teammates, good leaders, things like that.
And again, I know that Kendrick Davis signing to Sydney hurt a lot of Adelaide fans, but talking to Matt Weston, and he was very open in saying when he went to China and they put a multi-year deal on the table, they wanted to secure him for a long time. And he was more understanding of wanting a 1-year deal to potentially then launch himself to the NBA, and for whatever else enticed him, obviously, to go into Sydney. So Matt Weston said that's probably not what we're looking at for this season. We're looking in a different direction. And have then said, you know what, we're going to take our time because, as you said, it is so important. They've got some really strong foundational pieces there. But if they go and miss on 1 or 2 of these last 2, then you go from being, hey, we're fighting for a top 4 spot here, to maybe just trying to scrape into the play-in, and that's not where they want to be.
Do you think we'll see any signings before Summer League from Adelaide?
I think we see one of their primary signings this month in May. I think there's a good chance we see that. From some of the names that Pete and I are hearing that they're going after, does feel like some of them may stretch out to Summer League as some of these higher end guys gauge what their future looks like. But I think at least one of them will be early in the piece.
And again, those names you hear, if they can land one of those, they're going to be in a very, very good spot. So that's going to be looking forward to it. And that's what Summer League's about, right? It's not just players who might be available to play there. They might be there visiting, watching. They might have just their agents in town. That becomes a really crucial part.
Well, who knows? The next episode of Marketplace might be an Adelaide signing. We'll have to watch on with interest, but you might see something sooner rather than later. Olgun and Pete, thank you very much. As always, informative, insightful, all the latest news. It's why we have you both here. Thanks for joining us on the Marketplace. Don't forget, head to nbl.com.au for all the latest news, and we'll catch you next time.